At 11:07 p.m. on October 18, 2013, 4 U.S. Marines sat inside a small metal observation hut in the Arizona desert. Outside, the wind dragged across dry brush and abandoned streets in a forgotten border town just a few miles north of the Mexican line. Inside the hut, the only light came from 2 surveillance monitors. Infrared cameras scanned the empty town. At first, nothing moved. Then, one of the Marines leaned forward. "Hold up. Someone's outside the house." Through the grainy night vision feed, a figure stepped out of a broken doorway. The person staggered slightly, looking weak, exhausted, maybe injured. One of the Marines adjusted the zoom. The timestamp on the camera read 11:12 p.m., October 18, 2013. The man outside bent over as if he were sick. Then, suddenly, another shape rose behind him. Not from the house, from the darkness. The second shape moved fast. The Marine watching the screen froze. "Wait, that's not one of them." The 2 figures struggled. A moment later, the door burst open again, flooding the camera with white light from inside the house. When the lens adjusted, all 4 Marines in that hut felt their stomachs drop. 2 figures were now holding someone on the ground, and a third shape crouched over the victim, its head lowered, then lifted again. Even through the silent camera feed, they could see something spraying across the dirt. Blood. The scream reached their ears 2 seconds later. Inside the hut, no one moved. No one spoke. Then, one of the Marines whispered something that would later appear in a confidential Border Patrol report. "Jesus, what the hell is that thing doing to him?" But that wasn't the part that haunted them. The part they couldn't explain was what happened next. Because moments later, whatever was in that town turned and ran straight toward the people with the guns. The Marine telling this story is Corporal Daniel Reyes. In 2013, Reyes was stationed at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton in Southern California. He had joined the United States Marine Corps in 2011 as a generator mechanic. By mid-2013, his battalion received an unusual assignment. Instead of deploying overseas to Afghanistan or Iraq, a small group of Marines would be sent to support United States Customs and Border Protection along the southern border. The mission was part of a special-purpose Marine Air-Ground Task Force. Their job was simple on paper: monitor remote sections of the border where manpower was limited, report movement, do not engage. Reyes volunteered, or more accurately, was volunteered, because he was one of the few Marines in his section without a spouse or kids waiting at home. In September 2013, Reyes was transferred to training operations at Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center 29 Palms. The base sits deep inside California's Mojave Desert. Marines call it one of the harshest training environments in the country. Temperatures regularly climb above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Dust storms roll through without warning, and the smell of the base's sewage treatment pond, nicknamed Lake Bandini, is something every Marine stationed there remembers. For 6 weeks, the task force trained alongside Border Patrol agents. They learned surveillance procedures, observation reporting, and how to operate remote camera systems capable of spotting movement over a mile away. By early October 2013, the unit deployed to southern Arizona. Their forward operating base sat near a remote water well site roughly an hour outside the small desert community of Hinsman, Arizona. From there, the Marines would monitor nearly 80 miles of border territory, miles of desert, abandoned mining towns, and long stretches of land where almost no one lived. At least, no one was supposed to. The first strange report came 8 days into the deployment. It was October 10, 2013. Reyes was driving between observation posts, checking diesel generators that powered the surveillance systems. Each post consisted of a small hut, 2 Marines, and a tower camera that watched miles of desert. That afternoon, he stopped at Observation Site 5. The Marine on duty there, Corporal Jason Miller, had seen something unusual 2 days earlier. Through the camera, Miller had spotted a small group walking north across the desert. At first, he assumed they were migrants, but something was off. They weren't moving right. Miller told Reyes later. They kept stumbling, like they were hurt. The camera was over a mile away, but even from that distance, Miller could tell 2 of them were injured. They moved slowly, thin, barely able to stand. The sighting was reported to Border Patrol. By late afternoon, another post spotted the same group further north, still moving, still limping, still looking wrong. Later that evening, Reyes finished repairing a generator and began the long drive back toward the FOB. The desert was already dark. Out there, the night feels enormous. No city lights, no traffic, just wind pushing through dry mesquite and cactus. Reyes remembers the feeling clearly. It felt like something was watching the truck. Several times he thought he saw movement along the roadside, probably coyotes, maybe deer, but something about it made the hairs on his neck stand up. The next day, something even stranger happened. Another observation post reported a single injured man approaching from the south. The man looked badly mauled, like he'd been attacked by an animal. When Border Patrol heard the report, they gave an unusual instruction. Lock the observation hut. Do not approach. Do not provide medical aid. Just observe. That order confused the Marines, because basic Marine training teaches the opposite. If someone is injured, you help them. But the Border Patrol liaison repeated the command. Stay inside. Let us handle it. Within an hour, 2 agents arrived in a white Border Patrol truck. They collected the coordinates, then drove straight into the desert, toward the injured man. No explanation given, no follow-up report, and no one ever mentioned it again. At least, not officially. 1 week later, the entire mission changed. On October 17, 2013, the Marines received new instructions. Every observation post would now be double-manned, and for the first time since deployment, they were issued live ammunition. The reason given was simple: possible cartel activity south of the border. But several Marines later said the tone of the briefing felt different. Tense, urgent. Reyes and 3 others were assigned to a post overlooking an abandoned desert town about 15 miles north of the border. The place had once been a small mining settlement. Now it was empty. Collapsed buildings, broken windows, dust covering everything. The camera overlooking the town had been installed years earlier because smugglers sometimes used the structures as temporary shelters. At 6:30 p.m., the new shift arrived and took over the hut. Inside were 2 surveillance monitors. One pointed toward the desert hills, the other watched the town itself. For most of the evening, nothing happened. Then, around 9:40 p.m., the hill camera detected movement. 4 figures running across open ground, each carrying backpacks. They moved quickly, exactly the way smugglers usually did. Reyes radioed the sighting. Border Patrol acknowledged the report and told them to continue observation. The 4 men reached the outskirts of town and disappeared inside one of the houses. The cameras adjusted to keep the building in view. Then they waited. 4 hours passed. The desert grew colder. Clouds moved in, blocking most of the moonlight. By 11 p.m., visibility was poor. Reyes volunteered to take the late watch. He sat alone in front of the monitor, scanning the silent streets of the abandoned town. And that's when he began noticing movement, small flickers in the brush outside the buildings. At first, he assumed it was wildlife, but every time he turned the camera, the movement stopped. Then, suddenly, a door opened. The timestamp read 11:11 p.m. A man stepped outside the house. Infrared light showed his body heat glowing white against the darkness. He looked around nervously, then bent forward like he was about to vomit. Reyes zoomed the camera. The man stayed there for several seconds. Then something behind him moved. A shadow lifted from the darkness, not from the house, from the ground. The figure lunged. The man tried to run but collapsed immediately. Reyes slapped the shoulder of the Marine next to him. "Look at this." Both stared at the screen. The shape dragged the man away from the doorway. Seconds later, the door burst open again, flooding the camera with white light from inside the house. When the lens adjusted, all 4 Marines in that hut felt their stomachs drop. 2 figures were now holding someone on the ground, and a third shape crouched over the victim. its head lowered, then lifted again. Even through the silent camera feed, they could see something spraying across the dirt. Blood. The scream reached their ears 2 seconds later. Inside the hut, no one moved. No one spoke. Then, one of the Marines whispered something that would later appear in a confidential Border Patrol report. Jesus, what the hell is that thing doing to him? But that wasn't the part that haunted them. The part they couldn't explain was what happened next. Because moments later, whatever was in that town turned and ran straight toward the people with the guns. The Marine telling this story is Corporal Daniel Reyes. In 2013, Reyes was stationed at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton in Southern California. He had joined the United States Marine Corps in 2011 as a generator mechanic. By mid-2000,